And joining me now, as he does each and every week, is Sky News Australia's media watchdog columnist Gerard Henderson. Gerard, lovely to have you back. And look, while reporting on Trump's decision to, slap tariffs on Australia, ABC journo Melissa Clark made this astonishing claim on RN Breakfast.
Their argument is somewhat undercut by someone from their own side, former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, yesterday saying whilst he was able to secure an exemption last Trump administration, that took over a year and the circumstances this time are very different.
Malcolm Turnbull on the Liberal side. Well, it's been a long time and I'm not quite so sure about that. How about this?
If I said the name Peter Dutton, what one word springs into your mind?
Thug.
Gerard, what was your reaction?
Well, I found it pretty funny, actually, because if anyone understands Malcolm Turnbull and the current Liberal Party, it's pretty clear he's not on the side of people like Peter Dutton, and he's the leader of the Liberal Party and the leader of the coalition. So when I saw this, the idea that Peter Dutton's argument, whether it's valid or not, is somehow diminished by the fact that Malcolm Turnbull doesn't agree with it because he's on Dutton's side, I mean, that's just totally fallacious. He's not on Peter Dutton's side. He's on his own side, and he's entitled to be. But the idea that somehow you bring him into this debate is one of these comments that Melissa Clark is now doing, and others on the ABC. When someone is interviewed, someone comes on and makes a comment about what they think about it. I mean, Melissa Clark or Peter Martin or someone else. But it just totally misunderstands Malcolm Turnbull's position. He hasn't been a strong supporter of the Liberal Party since he was the Liberal Party leader and lost the support of a majority of his colleagues in the party room in 2018. I don't think he would deny that himself. I think he would be surprised to think he was on Peter Dutton's side on any issue.
Correct, and it has been downhill since 2018. Now, over at the public broadcaster and its chief political correspondent, well, Laura Tingle, she had this analysis of the situation on 7:30.
Australian politicians have expended a lot of oxygen and hyperbole over the years, extolling the virtues and depth of the special friendship we have with the United States. It has justified jumping on board American military adventures, hosting defence facilities and military bases, and more recently an AUKUS alliance which makes us even more dependent on the US for our defence strategy. On the domestic political stage, the US alliance is played out in terms of schoolyard besties. Prime Ministers are judged in terms of whether they are best mates with the President of the day.
And then she followed up with this.
If anyone should know about the difficulties of getting foreign leaders on the phone, it's the leader of the Federal Coalition. When last in government, the Coalition was unable to get anyone in the Chinese government to speak to Coalition ministers for several years about all the trade restrictions imposed on Australian products on its watch.
Gerard, is this straying a bit towards activism?
Well, the new ABC chair, when he came in about a year ago, Kim Williams, he hasn't done, I think, a lot of things that he should have done, but he has condemned activism, and that's an example of pure activism. Laura Tingle there is editorialising. She's an activist commentator, and some of the things she says are profoundly false. I mean, the idea that somehow that Australia shouldn't have been involved with the United States in the Pacific War when many thought the very future of Australia was at stake is just a ludicrous proposition. And I think if Ms Tingle had a chance to consider it, she wouldn't say it again. But she's too involved in the politics of it all, and that came out later in the same comment that she used in the introduction. And when she was again taking an activist role about China, I mean, for example, I can understand that there is a problem getting in touch with President Bush. I don't know whether Peter Dutton would have been able to do so if he was Prime Minister or not. He may have. Anthony Albanese on the third occasion wasn't, but it's got nothing to do with China. The argument Australia had with China, and most people now would concede that China was the aggressor in that argument, you're dealing there with the head of the Chinese Communist Party. In the United States, you're dealing with the democratically elected leader of the United States. And we do have our disagreements with the United States, but there's no comparison between trying to get a phone call with Donald Trump and not being able to get a phone call with President Xi. There's just no valid comparison. It's just it's not a sensible proposition unless you want to score a point against Peter Dutton, which is what Laura Tingle was doing.
And Gerard, just a little bit more on that. Look, these are really complicated issues. These are really nuanced issues. Do you feel like sometimes that context or that nuance gets lost in that sort of editorialising?
Well, it does, because it doesn't examine the arguments, because it is an editorial position. And when people can get to hear both arguments, both sides of this argument, those people usually can form their own opinion. But it is a complicated matter. It's not a simple matter, but when it's presented as a simple matter, I don't know where anyone goes from there. But there's absolutely no comparison between our relationship with the United States and our relationship with China now or a few years ago. There's absolutely no comparison whatsoever.
No, fair enough. And finally, the ABC rolled out Mark Willesee on its Four Corners program to put together you'd have to call it a hit piece on the Australian War Memorial. Here's the kind of people they chose for the interview.
Redevelopment is, to put it bluntly, an abomination.
Now, I think that's dirty money. It should not be accepting money from merchants of death.
And here's what they had to say on Afghanistan.
The panel next to the display is, to me, the most mealy-mouthed piece of writing the memorial has ever put up. It was completely inadequate because it didn't explain the moral vacuum that those soldiers had fallen into.
Gerard, unfortunately the ABC falls into this trap where there's not much in the way of alternative views, and I feel like that's what's happened here.
Well, Peter Stanley's a good historian, but on this matter, I mean, there's just a left-wing view that there's something wrong with the armaments industry, but if we didn't have an armaments industry in the Second World War, the other side would have won. I mean, this is the old left-wing thing about the agents of death. Now, my problem with the program was, I mean, the other argument is that that the War Memorial shouldn't be extended, but they put the two of them together plus some others to run a line. So 3 people who were connected with the War Memorial, who you would expect to support it, the chair, the managing director and a board member, they got brief says. And then the 10 other people they rolled out, 10 of them were opposed. So there was absolutely no balance whatsoever. And Mark Willesee himself, the presenter, he was vehemently opposed. So you had sort of an 11-3, but the 3 viewer would think, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? They're running the joint. But all the other people who are not running the joint come in and bag it. And some of the things are said are completely offensive. And I think most Australians admire the War Memorial. Many who know anything about it would think it probably, after all these years, should be extended a bit beyond when it was last extended. But to somehow just condemn it all, with only one side really of the debate heard, it really means that under Kim Williams, and he's only the chairman, he's not the managing director, so to be fair to him, but under the new chair, it's no different to what it was under the old chair. There's still no viewpoint diversity. And a program like that on Four Corners, a very influential program, should have heard from different views. And I could produce many people, intelligent, articulate people, men and women, who would rock up and say the exact opposite, but they didn't get a chance.
Gerard Henderson, thank you for your analysis.
Pleasure.
As always.